Welcome to The State of Us. Real people with honest opinions and the future of responsible media. Here's your host, Justin T. Weller.
Thank you all for being here. Google is teaching children how to act online. Is it the best role model? Well, I guess we'll find out. That's a question posed by the New York Times on October 23rd. Basically, Google wants to be, quote, wants students to be internet awesome. Should we trust Google? Well, we'll look to answer that, but of course we couldn't begin the conversation without
your friendly redneck liberal, Lance Jackson.
Which side do I get to take on this one?
Whichever
I can do
one you
either
want.
one. Okay.
Yeah?
All right.
Both sides?
So why do I care about this?
All the sides? Hey, that's a great question. Well, I think people care for a couple different reasons, but they all wrap into we're in a digital world, right? We keep moving in this direction of technology.
That's what people tell me.
Yes.
I try to keep it out of my world, but every time I leave my home, it seems like I come in contact with
nothing you can do about it, huh?
Yeah, I try.
They're just going to make you have the tech whether you want it or not. Education's moving online too, right?
So that's one reason I'm not in it.
I know that's we don't want to discuss, I guess, necessarily whether or not that's a good thing, but that's another reason people might care is as we keep moving education online, things like how to interact online, how to behave online, especially for kids, is super important.
It is important.
Obviously, we're working online now, increasingly. Pretty much every company, right? You got a computer in front of you or near you. And then schools obviously should be providing guidance on this, in my opinion. And I think we'll talk about to what extent it's their job versus parents versus.
Oh, good. Okay.
Yeah. Whose responsibility
Glad we're going to
is
discuss
it?
that.
Yeah.
Sure.
Because I think that's one that we all jump to things in our mind about who we default to, whose job it is.
It's really easier to make it somebody else's job instead of our own.
Yeah, always. So with that, a little bit about what Google is doing. So Be Internet Awesome is a so-called digital citizenship education program. The lessons include a cartoon game branded with Google's logo and blue, red, yellow, and green color palette. The game is meant to help students from 3rd grade through 6th grade guard against schemers, hackers, and other bad actors. Google plans to reach 5 million school children with the program this year and has teamed up with the National Parent Teacher Association to offer related workshops to parents. Obviously, critics of this, are going to point to an analysis of Google's curriculum, which was published in the Emerging Library and Information Perspectives. Be Internet Awesome, the program, generally presents Google as an impartial and trustworthy third party, which is especially problematic given that the target audience is impressionable youth. So in other words, this program basically is Google is just the arbiter of truth kind of thing, which of course we know is not the case. I mean, they're a company out to make money.
And you get your name and your logo in front of future customers.
Right.
On a daily basis or however often. And it's an audience that doesn't get to choose whether or not to have their. But anyway, I don't want to steal all my thunder. Go ahead.
So you have that component. There's a lot of schools too. This is important because Apple, Microsoft, and Google are kind of the big players right now in the education space as far as the tech that kids are going to use on a day-to-day basis. Maybe they have an iPad, maybe they have a Surface, maybe they have a Chromebook, which is Google's, version. And then take Urbana City Schools, our local community school here. They all have a Google-based email student account. So they've already got that tied in relationship with the company where they have that default trust of, well, this is through the school, so it must be okay.
Right.
And now we have that next step of Google's telling me what is and isn't okay online. But here's where we'll get into a couple of the big questions. I'll share some more on this, more backstory on this program in a little bit. But is this a tool or an ad? I think is the first thing that comes to mind. Now, obviously, Lance and I have not used the program.
It's both.
We only know what we have here.
It's both.
Okay.
I mean, that's the answer. It is a tool because it probably does have some value to it, not having gone through the program, but it is obviously an area in which young people need to be shown or taught how to behave on a device, So that makes it a tool. Is it an ad? Of course it is, because it's teaching you how to use a Google product, which then means when you go and you decide to purchase things yourself for the first time, oh, I'm comfortable with this. I use this in school. So it's also,
that default trust that's built in.
Sure.
Which makes it more likely.
Or comfort level or whatever. Oh,
I know how to use it.
I know what buttons to hit to get to what programs. Oh, those icons look familiar. The keyboard is, similar, or exact to what I used when I was in school. So there's a comfort level, not just a product, but it is. I'm just, wow, sure. I don't have to, this is what I grew up using, so I'm comfortable using it. Oh, now I'm buying it though. Before it was provided to me. Before it was, look, we're trying to do something good for you.
Now
all of a sudden they're taking your money for the next 50, 60 years.
Because you've got the three choices, right? In this scenario, we're just saying, obviously there's other choices beyond this, but just if you have on the shelf, right, Microsoft, or in your browser, you're looking at stuff online, you've got a Microsoft product, you've got an Apple product, and you've got the Google product. And Google's, not to pick on Google. This is just obviously, this is with
not
any
the
of
first,
them.
nor will they be the last company to ever try to get into the schools. Not even a company. Yeah. The U.S. military is good at this too.
But you grow up with the Google product, that built-in comfort level means that, well, I don't really know much. Not that I dislike Apple or Microsoft. I just don't know much about them. So now I stick with the Google product, even though it might not actually be the best product. But on the flip side, I wonder too, kids are very rebellious by nature, especially as they get into, these teen years. And they're and they're looking for ways to define themselves. So maybe rebellious isn't the right word, but
in the teen years, yes.
So if the school is the one saying this is what you have to use, I wonder though, is it going to have that effect that Google wants, which is, as you spelled out, later in life they're going to choose it, or do they get out of school and say, well, I had to have that, so now I'm intentionally not going to do it just because I want something different. I don't want what the school told me I had to have.
But what will they come back to? And I think you're just entering.
So maybe they switch.
I think you're just entering that stage of life.
But then they go back.
Where, how dumb are your parents growing up? And then as you get older, once you hit your mid-20s, how many times do you start acting and sounding just like your parents and using the same phraseology, having similar beliefs, buying the same products? When you go to buy your first washing machine or dryer, or your first, maybe not television anymore because nobody watches that way, but your first device, what did your parents use? Eventually we all tend to migrate towards what we're comfortable with, and we're comfortable in what we've been taught. And that's where we head.
So that's obviously a factor.
That's a that's a social argument, is that, how many times do you, as you grow up, and I know you're reaching there, we say, oh man, I said I'd never say that. And that's exactly the same thing my dad always said when that happened. And I think we find ourselves doing that as we get older, becoming more and more like our parents, trusting the products. You're right. There is a rebellious stage.
But the argument here is that for most, it's not going to last, right? So they're going to.
So you might go out and try a different product, is my argument. And then you're like, wow, this is kind of crappy. It doesn't do what my old device used to do. And then I'm going to go get my Google product because that's what I'm comfortable with. So, I will be rebellious, but for the most part, you've got me as a customer.
So the program is called Internet Awesome, and it contains a cartoon game called Interland, which offers an animated world presented by Google. In it, children navigate spammers and hackers in, quote, reality river, and consider who in their social network can see what they post online on Mindful Mountain. So Google's obviously the positive about tech companies like this, because it's easy for you and I to get on the negative side of them in the classrooms, is obviously they are the ones that are going to be the most knowledgeable about the threats that exist. And that's both a pro and a con, I think. They know, right, within their own company, the things that they maybe do that consumers aren't as comfortable about, like the amount of information that Google, Microsoft, Apple collect about you, is maybe something that if you understand the amount of info they're collecting, you're not comfortable with. On that same token, though, they also have a pretty good understanding of cybersecurity threats, which they themselves obviously really aren't the threat. They're not interested in hacking your computer that we're aware of. You know, everybody's your friend until they're not, kind of thing. I mean, we can play that conspiracy side, but based on what we know, these companies most of the time seem to
or
play.
what products they send you, or what commercials they send you.
Yes.
Or how they try to influence your buying power.
But much of that's not based on illegal acquisition of information. It's based on, again, whether or not you realize you provided consent, that you provided consent when you checked that box and you went through it without even thinking about what it meant that you were agreeing to it.
But they're not telling you that in the game, I would expect.
Exactly. And that's where I'm getting to. It's a pro and a con, because as far as like third party, other countries, malicious hackers who are trying to steal your financial information, that's different than a company. It's different in the respect that one is legal and one is not.
I know what you're trying to say, but the point is they're going to use this device in the future to help them make more money.
Yes.
And so is that something you can trust? Somebody's not doing it for an altruistic reason. They're doing it so that they can make money in the future.
Most of the time, yeah.
It's like the, you know, cigarette companies giving GIs free cigarettes in World War II.
They weren't doing it just because they're nice.
Exactly.
Because they get them hooked, and then you come back and you buy that for the rest of your life. And you're, you know, I mean, you guys do the math on how much, right, you use cigarettes, but it's not all that different than how much you use something like a phone.
And people are going to say, but wait a minute, Google's not trying to hurt anybody. Okay, but they're still trying to get in your pocket for the rest of your life. And this isn't giving people a choice as to whether to allow them to get in your pocket. So just we need to understand that it's not totally altruism on Google's part. We just want to
there's a motive.
We want to teach kids how to navigate cyberspace so that they don't get taken advantage of in the future. That's not Google's real reason to do this. I'm assuming.
Right. Is this a tool or an ad? I think Lance's answer is pretty much the same as mine. It's both. I mean, it is a tool because obviously and that's not to negate that
it's Google, a way to look good.
Right. Google is doing something that is good. The question is does the bad outweigh the good or vice versa? And that's obviously it hasn't been around very long, so it's hard to know for sure, but it's definitely missing a big component, which is companies like Google, Apple, and Microsoft, Facebook. The program misses a big part of privacy.
Why do they donate or give these devices away at a price that schools can afford them?
Yeah. It's not because okay. And see, this is where I don't want to jump to just say they're not at all generous.
There's a time where, hey, we're making $400 trillion, which is a staggering amount, according to what you told me today. Anytime you get in the trillions, right?
Yeah.
So, and I'm guessing.
Staggering.
But they're making trillions of dollars. So they're giving back and they're helping young people of today. Yes, they are. That's true. But what percentage of it is that versus what percentage of their reasoning is because we are trying to get lifelong customers for our product. So we'll give you a device that costs maybe $1,000 for $200 or $300. But we'll more than make up that when you get out of school and they take your Chromebook away and you have to go buy your first device.
Right. Because we have you in the school system where we're being generous for, 12 years. But then we have 30, 50, 80, whatever years of life to continue to capitalize off of you. So
and when we make our devices so that they will break down.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we know that companies do that.
Right.
Now,
that's a twofold based on what people are willing to pay, which is we're testing the waters on right now. I mean, we
Sure.
see phones keep getting more expensive. And then also the planned obsolescence and the pace at which technology advances. I mean, there's a lot of factors that go into it, but sure, there's always that component of to what extent as a company. Apple had a lot of coverage on that with their iPhones and their operating systems, where older iPhones wouldn't, basically, they'd be told, hey, your performance is going to suffer. And to what extent was that truly because the new tech's so advanced that the performance isn't as good versus they built it in such a way that it's not going to work very well on those things.
And the local phone store told me that 4 years ago, I should get a new iPhone because flip phones were going to be obsolete. And then I went in last week with my wife because her phone had issues, and I pulled out my flip phone and they go, oh yeah, those are going to be around forever because people still want them. And I said, finally, the consumer wins one. 4 years ago, they were trying to get me to change because they're never going to exist anymore. But enough of us stood up and said, no, not everybody wants to walk around with that powerful of a computer in their hand. Some of us want to use our phone. We're satisfied with it to be, an old style camera. Right. I can connect to the internet if I have to or want to.
If you really wanted to, yeah.
Right. But basically, I just want to call people and send text messages.
Yep. And it does that.
And it does it very well for a very cheap price.
And if you drop it
for very long periods of time.
Hold up.
Right.
Yeah. So we've answered that question. Is this a tool or an ad? The next one I've already kind of hinted at. What's missing from the program? Google isn't impartial, obviously. That's what we've been talking about. But there's privacy standards, and that's what I was talking about before, that really, as far as we can tell, is pretty much absent from this course as far as privacy as it relates to the people that are giving you the technology.
Well, is there such a thing as privacy when you have technology? I think that's a misnomer that the technology people have tried to sell to the public.
Well, it's interesting you bring that up.
There isn't privacy. Hey, if you have your phone and you text, you have privacy. And then, I'm in the workplace and they say, oh no, anything you text or any search engine you visit while at work can be viewed by your boss. Mm-hmm. Say what? Or, hey, this is private. These are your pictures. Just like you took it on a piece of film back in the day, a film camera. And so nobody has access to these pictures. I go to apply for a job and my boss sees all the pictures of my senior visit to Florida on spring break. But what if I had an old Kodak Instamatic with the negatives, it is a lot more private than if I use an iPhone and use it. So we sell technology as
having privacy.
Right.
I think
in reality it doesn't.
Yeah. Well,
and so now here's where how many young people don't realize that?
Sure. But I think there's a twofold.
They take those pictures, they make the statements on Facebook. Mm-hmm. Look at the two big issues in the news this weekend. The pipe bomber and the shooter inside the Jewish synagogue. Uh-huh. How much information was picked up from their use of electronic devices?
Right.
There's not privacy there. And in this case, it was good because we caught, quote, bad people to society. Okay, I get that, but it's still not privacy.
Well, and here's what I think.
And you could argue, well, they didn't want privacy. They were posting. Oh, okay, but even if you don't post on these public sites, people still have access to it. People can still get to it. Correct me if I'm wrong, because you're much more in the know on this kind of stuff than I am. But just listening to you and I just talk about things over the last 2 or 3 years, that's kind of the feeling I get, is that I thought I couldn't be found, and you pointed out how easily I'm found, even how much I try to use cash, not credit card, don't use my phone, don't purchase things on the internet, and yet you have no trouble finding out all kinds of information about me that I didn't want people to know.
Well, I'll set it up like this. Let's remove ourselves from the current day and age and go back before widespread use of computers and the internet. So you take a picture, right, with your Kodak camera on film, and you go get it developed at the local photo shop, because this is before Walmart develops film, whatever. Mm-hmm. And you bring the pictures home.
I worked in one of
house.
those places for a summer, so that's okay. Yeah.
Gotcha. And you bring, and I am old enough to remember frequently going with my mother to the local place that was right next to Kroger. You might remember that. Mm-hmm. That was there for a long time, and they could take photos in addition to developing film and other things. Mm-hmm. But you had to do that, right, to get your pictures. So you take it there to get it developed. All right. Well, your first step of privacy has been compromised because somebody else is developing that film, and they could certainly make a copy of it without you having any idea that they did so. So layer one of being compromised. And that's assuming that just one store person handles it and that there's not two or three during the process, which is possible depending on how shifts and all that are organized. And then you take it home. And while you're not home one day, somebody breaks in and looks at your photos and then leaves, and they don't take it, but maybe they take a photo of the photo, right? And you have no idea that you were compromised. It's not, where we are today is really not unlike that, in that what happens is I have, in this case, my phone is like my house, and that somebody went into it and took a photo that was stored on the phone, that I haven't shared. I haven't willingly made it publicly available, just like the photo in your house. You didn't post it on the outside of your house and said, hey, everybody in the neighborhood, come by and look at this photo. It was inside your house with the intention of keeping it private. It's inside your phone with the intention of keeping it private. And a hacker enters your phone, copies the photo, and leaves the photo there, just like in this situation we were talking about. So in that respect, I don't think it's way different. There's a difference in how we're storing what we used to store. I also think that the news around what's happening suggests to people that because it's on your phone, right? Forget about social media for a moment, posting photos. We'll talk about that in a second. But just because I've taken it on a digital device that's connected to the internet, that it is not very secure there. Just to give people an idea of what it would take for somebody like you or I to get a hold of that photo, assuming there's a passcode on the phone. Okay, if you don't have a passcode, again, we're getting into things there where
now is Google,
people are making choices to be less secure. But if you have a passcode.
Okay, but let's go back to the show real quickly.
Yeah.
Okay, and I appreciate what you're saying in your example. Is Google teaching that in their program?
No, and that's what I'm getting at. Is this, I don't think people understand the difference, because the way, and I'm a little bit blaming the news media, but at the same time, there's also a personal responsibility of understanding how things work. You can't just assume that the media is going to tell you everything that you always need to know. I mean, you can, but I think that's a bad way to live, is, they're going to tell me everything that I ever need to know, and there's no education that I need to do by myself.
Hey, the courts say that. When you go to the restaurant, they have to tell you, hey, this plate is hot, this food is hot. Well, that's good.
But they didn't used to have to do that.
No, they didn't. We had some common sense.
If you order something that's hot, it's probably going to be hot when it comes out.
If I go to sit down at a meal and I order something off the hot food section of the menu, I hope that it
arrives
more
hot
than tepid. Yes.
Okay.
But we've had lawsuits now where you win. Well, they didn't tell me it was going to be that hot.
Right. Okay. I thought it would be hot, but not that hot. So, but that's, I guess, what I'm getting at.
Sounds like the theory of Goldilocks.
Is there's a lot of different stages. There is a difference between I pull out my phone and I take a photo and I keep it for myself on the phone, and somebody invades that and takes it away.
Okay, but what's Google teaching these kids?
Right.
Is Google teaching that you need to have a password on your phone? Is Google teaching that there's different levels of safety that you can?
It's teaching the parts, again, hackers. So the part that I just explained, right? It's teaching you about what constitutes a strong password, why it's important to have passwords. But that doesn't do anything for a company like with my phone. My phone is based on the Android operating system, which is administered by Google. Okay. And in order to use that, I have to log in with a Gmail account, which is used by Google. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So Google is explaining to you how to protect against people outside of that sphere who might want to come in, which is a real threat. I mean, I'm not discounting that. What they're not talking about is your data as it relates to what Google has access to, or somebody like Google. Like if you use an iPhone, what does Apple know about you, right? Apple might tell you about, here's all these other bad people out there who might get stuff, but you've agreed to work with us. What do we know about you? And how do you know what we know about you? Now, a lot of things have changed in recent years where it has gotten better with those companies making it easier for, if you want to find out, for you to find out and change what they're allowed to collect about you. But again, this program is not focused on teaching kids of the companies you've chosen to work with. How do you protect your data against them if you want to? Some people don't. But I think that's part of what's missing from here is, how do people make a good decision about that? What should I be okay with them collecting and what shouldn't I be? And that's where I think these kinds of programs are going to have an inherent issue with. Google's not going to want to tell you, right, here's why you wouldn't want us to collect this information, because they want to collect it. So why would they tell you why you shouldn't want them to do that? And that's where I think we get into this next thing, which is talking about the solution. But before we do that, Lance, we get to talk about why we're here and what we're doing, right? So have you gotten the part down about what the State of Us is trying to do?
We're trying to inform the public.
I like it.
Rationally and intelligently.
Oh, that last part's dangerous.
Oh.
Rational? Intelligence?
We're trying.
Are those things that...
I said we're trying to.
Oh, okay. We might not be...
I put the word trying in front of it.
Okay.
We're trying to educate the public rationally and intelligently.
I like it.
And not rant and rave.
I was getting more at, I don't know if... Is there a place for rationality in today's world? Is that still something that people care about?
I think they care about it. I'm not sure we show them how to get there.
Got it.
It's not a very accepting world of differences right now.
Speaking of that, all the podcasts on TrueChat pursue a common goal, which I know you're familiar with. Haven't got it quite memorized yet, right? We were good to get Spotify down.
Yeah,
so
I got Spotify.
We're working on it.
What else you want from me?
But TrueChat's mission is to help educate people by providing honest, open, and respectful conversations.
That's rational.
Yeah. Honest, right?
Open.
Respectful.
Yeah.
Yeah. Those are good things.
Yeah.
I agree, though. I don't think there's enough of those today. And if at any point all of you think that we're not doing a good job, we encourage you to email ethics@truechat.org. ethics@truechat.org. Let us know what we're doing wrong. And of course, engage with us. Some of you might be watching this on YouTube. If so, we're glad that you've tuned in. If it's the first time, you can subscribe in all kinds of places. Like,
I know Spotify.
All
right.
We got it.
Okay.
Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere fine podcasts are found.
Is there a Stitcher?
There is.
Yeah.
Stitcher is another place.
Ooh, I got two now.
I know.
I can go to. I got my S's.
You got to get Apple Podcasts down. Doesn't your wife have an iPhone?
Apple Podcasts.
I
I don't
that's
know.
what
Does
she's
she?
got?
Yeah, probably does.
Okay.
Apple Podcast sounds too much like apple pie.
I know.
We shouldn't do this show at
We're
lunchtime.
hungry. That's right. Recording at that noon to 2 slot is tough.
Apple Podcasts. Okay.
So the solution, Lance, all of you out there tuning in too, let us know your thoughts on this first part. Is there anything else missing from Google's lineup of program information? I think to kick off the solution part is I liked the beginning of the article here where it said a so-called digital citizenship education program. I think we need a digital citizenship class of sorts. Again, whether that's administered at home or in the schools, I think that something along those lines of teaching what is digital citizenship needs to exist in the world we have. Oh, you're sighing on me. You don't think so? We don't need that? Or let me guess, right? You wish we didn't need it, but you know that we do. So we have to keep talking. Because if we just didn't use all the tech, right?
I'm not sure we need it.
Yeah?
I have a hard time with anybody telling me I need something.
that it would be a good idea for students to be better prepared to handle the digital world?
I don't think so. I think all it is you have to have, I'm sorry, I'm going to go old school on you.
Okay.
You just need to have somebody at home teaching you the difference between right and wrong. I didn't go to the word parents, but you need somebody teaching you the difference between right and wrong.
Who do you think that should be?
It depends on the makeup of your family of your family unit. I don't think it should be the schools.
Okay.
I don't think it should be an outside source. I think it should be the people that are raising you, that are rearing you.
What if they don't know though? Because I think we get into that with this digital problem. How well are parents equipped? I mean, do they know what constitutes a safe password? Do you?
But I said, I think that's the problem. Is technology is outpacing people's knowledge and responsibility.
Some people's.
But you get into this whole cyberbullying.
Uh-huh.
I don't need to be taught that that's wrong, that this is cyberbullying. I mean, if you're taught at home that talking badly about others is not the proper way to get along in this world. It shouldn't be, well, it's okay to talk badly about others until you get caught. And again, that has to do with at home. If mom and dad are bashing the preacher on Sunday dinner, or bashing their employer on the way home after picking their kids up from whatever activity, or bashing the person in charge of their child's activity, or bashing the child's teacher, well, then you're teaching your child that it's okay to be a bully. So it becomes the responsibility of those people that are rearing the child, not the school, that's just me. I'm just giving my opinion. I'm not saying I'm right, and you're wrong or everybody else is wrong. But don't go pointing and dropping it off on everybody else's plate that this needs to be done.
I think it's a twofold.
If you have children in your realm, I mean, if you're a grandparent and you're watching your grandchildren, you should act in the way that you would like them to act. If you show them something different, that's what kids are going to do. So if you're constantly bashing people in front of them, if you're constantly judging people negatively in front of small children, then they grow up to think that that's okay. And then it shouldn't fall on the schools or Google or Apple or somebody else to tell them that that's not right. Because you have more influence on them than any of these technology companies or the schools do.
There is an inherent responsibility to demonstrate positive behavior. On that same, or building off of that same point, though, I also think that, I don't just think, I know from personal experience talking to other people in the world, and I don't know everything that I should about digital privacy, digital security, but I know a lot more than 90, that might be generous, 85%, 80% of the public, of the adult public who's capable of knowing, about these things.
I would totally agree with that.
Okay.
10 times more than I do.
And so my point there is that I don't think it's just the responsibility. I believe that education in part is to help prepare kids for the world. Whether or not we're doing that maybe is a different conversation. But to wrap it up, my thought there is that there has to be some level of institutional teaching of problem solving when it comes to the digital space, because things change. What constitutes a secure password today, 10 years from now, it's mostly going to be biometrics, eyes. So, I mean, if we teach a kid today in third grade what constitutes a safe password, they might not even need that. So, do we waste time on that, or do we maybe talk to them about some of those larger issues where we get into things like how we know through a number of different studies that people are typically subconsciously meaner when they're not face to face with somebody. And that's not just, I send an email. It's phone calls, it's text messages, it's any communication, that is not like Lance and I are right now, face to face. And every step you get removed from, hearing what somebody's saying, and you get into that passive, like an email is one of the worst forms because it is an instant form of communication, but oftentimes it's delayed, and that it arrives and you're not having typically an ongoing back and forth conversation a lot of the time. It's a more tiered kind of conversation. So it can be people, one, interpret things the wrong way, assuming the worst. And then two, people say the wrong things or say things in a way that are more crass because we're just not conditioned as humans to be as sympathetic to other people if we can't see what they're feeling. Doesn't mean we can't be, just means that we're not conditioned. We're not as actively thinking about that kind of thing. So I think that there has to be some teaching in that, at least giving kids that information and helping them make sure they understand. It doesn't mean that you're even trying to be mean, but I've gone back and read emails that I've sent and and in context now of thinking about what they'd said and what I'd said, I'm like, I probably could have said that better. I probably, if I had been in person, I probably wouldn't have said it that way. And I wasn't trying to be, I wasn't thinking, let me be mean when I write this, it was more of a, well, I can't see them, so I'm really going to let them know how I feel, kind of thing.
Wouldn't we all be better off if we did that in person? Maybe.
But at the same time, that goes back to that conversation we had the other day of, is it always best to say exactly what you think? Well, we've grown up in a world where we typically don't teach that, right? If it's not nice, you shouldn't say it. Or if it can't make things better.
Instead, we badmouth people behind their backs, and then our children get on their devices and badmouth people without telling them who they are.
Yes. So my point there is,
like you said, different layers of protection.
Yes.
But we taught that to our children. We taught that to our young people because, well, Daddy, why don't you tell the boss what you said about him last night?
Yeah.
And that's, well, I didn't say that, But if Dad can say it under an assumed name and post it, then it's okay. Shouldn't be okay in either place.
And that's where my point is.
And that's what we've taught our young people.
I think you've got to have some institution side of this because we are trusting.
I'm not saying you're wrong.
Yeah.
But I'm saying it would be more effective if we patterned it for them, if we did it at whoever comes in contact with the young people.
I think like a lot of things,
whomever that may be.
Both parties have a role to play, and they're different, because different areas of the country, different values in families, they're not all going to be the same. At the same time, I think there are some universal principles that could be shared with kids that would make them better prepared to think critically about how they're behaving online. And that I think that is something that we have to teach as we have accepted as a society that we are increasingly moving toward a more digital world, both technologically and personally and professionally. It's all mixing, and we have to be better prepared to really understand the consequences of each level of those tiers and how it changes. Because knowing means that then at least we have the ability to think about it. So often I think people send an email or a digital communication and they didn't even realize that they had been mean, They just didn't. They didn't really think about it. And so that's where I think you have some institution that can come in and help. And also failing that the parents provide all the tools. Again, a lot of the parents I know, they're not bad parents, but they just don't know. I mean, they just can't, they're not doing a good job, and it's not intentional. They think they're doing okay. It's like when you ask most people if they're pretty honest, pretty much everybody says yes, but we know when you actually stack it up and we record their actions over a week, well, that's not, not as true as most people think it is. So that's, I guess, where you kind of get into this of, I think a lot of parents, they don't think they're doing a bad job. They think that their kid's pretty safe online, but everybody thinks that. And most of the time it's not true. So there's a front on the parents for shows like this for them to become better prepared. And then there's the institutional education front for more universal critical thinking about being safe online.
And the only thing I'd say about the institutional is, what do you take out of the curriculum to teach this?
Yep. That's the question we always have, right? Well, I mean, I just talked about that before the show. We are now having to try to teach more in the same amount of time. We've added between 25 and 50% more information that has to be taught in the same length of a school day. Something has to give, right? Or we teach everything worse.
Right.
I mean, those are the only choices.
Yeah.
Either everything we get less time on, or we get rid of some things.
Right.
Or we have to make the day longer. So that's a different conversation, but it's a good point because it's easy to just say that.
I just want to put that
right.
in there because it's one of the
coming
things
from
that,
the experience side, right?
Yeah.
It's easy for the state or the Fed to say, well, you need to do this, but you still want me to do everything else, right? Yeah. Yeah, there's that teacher side of it of you have to.
And my student contact time is the same or less.
Right. And the administration side of, well, you want us to do these things, but you're not giving us any more money, so I can't hire any more teachers. So now I have to tell my teachers to just suck it up and do it, and then they're upset with me, even though there's nothing I can do about it because now you've told me that I have to do it that way. So yeah, think about that too. Let us know if there's other solutions. If you have a different take than Lance or I, at TrueChat.org, Facebook, Twitter, etc. Engage with us. Let us know. And you can find TrueChat podcasts where?
On Apple Podcast, Stitcher,
yes,
and Spotify.
Yes, your favorite one.
Okay. I got 3.
Yeah,
I got 3.
That's good. Day. I know. We'll see. We'll see if on Wednesday you can still, if you still get all 3. Right?
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
No cheat sheet either.
I know. No script or anything. He's memorized. We'll see if it sticks. So let us know your thoughts, and please subscribe to the show everywhere that fine podcasts are found. For the State of Us on TrueChat in Urbana, Ohio, I'm Justin T. Weller.
And I'm Lance Jackson.
Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you next time on The State of Us. Be the change.